Take a look at page 866. $864. So, 864, two lines from the bottom. Just move over just a bit because you don't block the camera. Everybody got chumash? There should be plenty of chumashim. Okay, so for those, the story so far is that Balaam is hired by Balak to go curse the Jewish people, and he says these curses in a very cryptic way. He tries to curse. He starts out with yesterday we called it a parable, and the reason he doesn't just say what he's thinking is because the problem, the reason he doesn't say what he's thinking is that if God is favoring the Jewish people, he can't just go straight up against God and say something directly, to just go curse directly. So he tries to use something that could then be interpreted as a curse, and even that doesn't work. Now, we had mentioned yesterday that the prophecy, he actually achieves a level of prophecy like Moshe Rabbeinu. That's a very strange thing, that a guy who's a pervert and he's an absolute degenerate. That's the word. He's a degenerate, certainly for his attempt to achieve the negative forces, and he's a disgusting person. So why should he achieve the level of prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu? He gets all the way up to the level, nobody else achieves that level. So the answer is like this. Why is it, we have to ask a different question, why does Moshe Rabbeinu achieve such a high level? Why does Moshe Rabbeinu achieve such a level which the Talmud calls aspaklaria ha'me'ira? Aspaklaria ha'me'ira. Moshe Rabbeinu has like a clear vision, whereas other prophets, again, I can't, what prophecy is since we don't have it, and it's been a while since I personally experienced it, so it's difficult to describe. But what the other prophets, they would get a vision, a prophecy, which would then be filtered through their own character, and based on that, they'd have to come up with the interpretation of the prophecy. Moshe Rabbeinu had what's called an aspaklaria ha'me'ira. Aspaklaria ha'me'ira had a very clear vision. And the reason Moshe Rabbeinu had a clear vision was because what Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy was a prophecy of the Torah. It was given the Torah. There's no margin of error there. It's got to be absolutely clear. Balaam, who's trying to curse the Jewish people, and God wants to change it into a blessing, there's no margin of error over there. He doesn't want to leave chance that there could be any sort of misinterpretation and say something negative when it's actually meant to be positive. Page 864. And therefore, Balaam says like this. It's about him. He goes off. Yesterday, we saw that Balak said to him, "What's going on?" And he said, "How can I curse if God hasn't cursed?" And then he says two lines from the bottom. Ki berosh tzurim erenu. I see them from the top of mountains. Umigvos ashurenu. I perceive them from the hills. I guess, how does he translate it? From the hills I see it. The mountains and the hills is a veiled reference to the forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and the mothers. Even though it's called forefathers, there were actually four mothers, but we call it the forefathers, even though there were three fathers, but four mothers, but we call them the forefathers. I'm sorry, I didn't make it up. That's what they're called. What can I do? So the mountains and the hills, he's saying, I've seen, looking at the Jewish people from the vantage point of their ancestors who were so great, and the Jewish people are great. And then he says, Hein levada yishkon, the nation dwells alone, uvagoyim lo yischashav, they're not counted among the other nations, which is, we're experiencing that today, where obviously the Jewish people have to play by even Israel has to play by different rules. We're expected to allow ourselves to have ballistic missiles shot at us, or even Netanyahu said the other day that any country, imagine the United States, if they had ballistic missiles being shot at them every day from Mexico, the United States wouldn't say, okay, let's exercise restraint. The United States, Mexico would look like the world's biggest parking lot very quickly. So the Jewish people we're not counted among the other nations. We were expected to play by different rules. But if you notice, there's a difference between Am, Hein Am Levodad Yishko, the nation dwells alone. Uva Goyim, and among the other nations, they're not counted. Now, why are we referred to as an Am and the other nations are referred to as Goyim? By the way, the word Goy is not a negative word. Sometimes they say, oh, he's a Goy. You know, a Goy is not it's not a pejorative. Goy means a nation. We are even called a Mamleches Kohanim, a kingdom of Kohanim, V'Goy Kadosh. We are a holy nation. We're called a Goy. Here, he refers to us as an Am. Now, what's the difference between an Am and a Goy? And the answer is that you're Italian if you were born in Italy. And you're what's the word? An Afghan? I guess that's how you call them. You're an Afghan if you were born in Afghanistan, and you're a Michiganer if you were born in Michigan. So every nation has you are where you come from. You are where you come from based on your geographic location. You're not a Jew because you come from Jewville. There is no Jewville. Jews became Jews in a desert. Jews became Jews in a desert. That's why we got the Torah. We're called an Am because we're the only people who are identified not by our geographic nationality. We don't have a geographic nationality. Israel is our homeland, but we're not Israelites. We're Jews. We're why? Because we're not defined by geography. We're defined by a Torah. That's what's annoying about us. People have trouble defining Jews. Are you a Jewish American or an American Jew?
That's one of the biggest questions people ask.
Right. Which what? Well, you're not either because you're from Toronto, right? So you're from America and suburbs. But are you a Jewish? What's it called? Torontonian? Oh, come on, make it easy, guys. Are you a Jewish American or American Jew? Are you a Jewish Saskatchewanian? Isn't there a place that's called? What's it called?
Saskatchewan.
How?
Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan, right. That's you're right. That's what I meant. Right? Are you a Jewish American or an American Jew? The answer, which one are you? I'm not a Jewish American. That means I'm an American. What kind of American? I happen to be a Jewish American. I'm not an American. I'm an American Jew. You're a Torontonian Jew. You're an Afghan Jew. That's what I am is the second word, not the first word. The first word's the adjective. The second word is the noun. In Hebrew, it's the opposite, by the way. In Hebrew, you're an ish tov. You're an ish yafed. The adjective comes second. Yeah.
Isn't Jewish, isn't that a geographical thing? Because it's from Yehuda, so the people
from Judea. No. It comes from the tribe. It's a description. It's a description of a attitude it's not a description of a place. There is a place called Judea. There's a place called Judea, but that's not what makes us Jewish. What makes us Jewish is the Torah.
The people in the desert weren't all Jews, though. They were the Israelites.
Right. That's right. Exactly. What made the Jewish people a nation? The Torah is what makes us a nation, not a location. We're a nation because of the Torah, not a nation because of location. And that's what he's saying. We dwell alone. And that dwelling alone means we're not interested in their behavior. We're not interested in their morals. We're not interested in their values. We have our own value system. That's what he's saying. Okay, now let's go on. We have a few points. I'm going to skip around today because it's the last day. It's the last day for this parsha. If you take a look at Pasuk Yud Gimel, Balak is frustrated because Balaam is told to curse the Jewish people, and he ends up giving them a blessing. Then in Pasuk Yud Beis, Vayan Vayomar, Pasuk Yud Gimel, 5 lines from the top. Vayomer elav Balak, Lechna iti el mokom acher, go with me to another location, Asher tir'enu misham, where you'll see the Jewish people from there. He's looking down. He's on these valley, in the literal sense, he's up high looking down at the entire area covered by this 2.5 million people, which is a massive area. He's got this view of this nation out in the desert. Efes katseu sira v'kulo lo sira. Well, you'll see the edge of them. V'kovdo li misham. Try to curse them from the edge now. Instead of looking at the entire people, go somewhere where you can only see the tip of the people, and you'll curse them by only seeing the tip of the people. Now, what does that mean? What's the difference if you see the entire people or the tip of the people? Excuse me. What's the difference if you see the edge of the people or the tip of the people? What he's saying is like this. Take a look. If you look at the Jewish people as a whole, and you compare us to the other nations, we're pretty good. We're pretty good. If and we're talking about Torah Jewry, Torah observant Jewry. How many murders are there among Torah Jews? How many acts of adultery are there among Torah Jews? How many times did Torah Jews steal? You know, once in a while, okay, we talk lashon hara, yeah, okay, you know, if you watch a television show, if you watch a soap opera, that's all they do is talk lashon hara. You know, there's for Jewish people, to hit each other. You know, Moshe Rabbeinu says if you raise your fist, you're already called a Russia. I told you, it's unheard of in the yeshivas that there's a fist fight. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen once in a while, but our behavior is completely different behavior. Wherever you go, if you compare us to any other nation, we're pretty good. So Balak says to Balaam, listen, I don't want you to look at the Jewish people as a whole. I want you to look at the Jewish people I want you to look at, let me tell you, there are chumashim over there. Maybe there should be extra chumashim. I want you to look at the Jewish people not as a whole. Look at the Jewish people at the edge of them. Try to pick out individuals. He's got an individual flaw. You've got your individual flaw. Each individual, we may have flaws. And maybe that way a curse will rest on the Jewish people. Because, if you take the edge, nitpick them, then maybe you'll find something. But if you look at them as a whole, if you look at them as an entire nation, then you're not going to succeed because they're too good compared to the other nations. And we are. We're good. We're good compared to the other nations. Good. People say the Jews are always bickering with each other. Jews are, if you see two cab drivers in Israel, they can even be secular cab drivers, and they have a fender bender, they'll get out of the car, yell at each other, and then invite each other over for Friday night for Kiddush. And that's how the fight's going to end. I heard, my brother told me there was a case, there's two cab drivers got out and they were yelling at each other. And one of them pulled a gun on the other one. At that point, he got upset. He walked in, then he started hitting the guy. Why was he hitting him? Because we both know you're not going to shoot me. Now you've insulted me by taking, you think I'm scared because you pulled a gun on me? How dare you insult me as if, you think I'm a little kid that I'm scared of your gun? That's when he got upset. He's not going to shoot him. Okay, we have digressed. Jews have digressed, but that's the way it works. That's the way Jews are. Isn't it an amazing thing? You can go Friday night to any Jew's home on a Leil Shabbos, and you could I could tell you exactly what the procedure is going to be and what the menu is going to be. There's going to be fish. There's going to be soup. There's going to be singing. There's going to be tchina, probably. Right? There's going to be. You can it's all one family. And if there is no such thing as a Jew who knocks on the door on a Friday night and says, "I have nowhere to eat. Where should I eat?" People will be insulted if you eat somewhere else. So we're doing pretty good. We're doing pretty good. But what about the individuals? I know this guy talks lashon hara and this guy misses shachris sometimes, and this guy once in a while he cheats a little bit on his taxes. Okay, we have our individual flaws that we have, and that's what he's hoping for. Now, Balaam goes. Now skip on ahead. Go to Perek Chaf Daled, and this is a remarkable insight into Balak and Balaam. It's on page 868, 6 lines from the bottom. Sorry, 2 lines from the bottom. Vayisa Balaam es einav. Balaam raises his eyes, tries another location. 868, 2 lines from the bottom. Pasuk beis. Vayaris Yisrael shochen lishvatav. He sees the Jewish people dwelling by their tribes. Vatihi alav ruach elokim, and the Spirit of God rests on him. Now you have to see Rashi over here, gentlemen. It's the left column of Rashi, 5 lines from the bottom, 3 lines from the bottom. If you find it, please show the person next to you. Shochen lishvatov. Everybody see that? 868, left column of Rashi, 3 lines from the bottom. Shochen lishvatov, they're dwelling by their tribes. Now, what does this expression mean that he sees the Jewish people dwelling by their tribes? Ra'a kol shevet v'shevet. He saw each tribe shochen la'atzmo ve'enan me'uravim. First of all, he sees the tribes are divided up. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. They're all divided up in sections, very organized. And then he sees something else. Ra'a she'ein pischein mechuvanim zeh keneged zeh. He saw that the entrances of their tents don't face each other. No 2 tents are facing each other. Now, I want to ask you a question. Imagine this is your house over here, and you have a big bay window, and there's an empty lot facing you, and you have a big bay window. And I build a house right opposite your house, and I open up a bay window facing your bay window. How would you feel?
Violated.
You'd feel violated. Yeah. What's the problem? Visual damage. Hezek Re'iyah, what we're learning, all right? Why? What would bother you about it?
They made my house their main attraction.
What bothers you about that?
Because they're looking into the window.
And what bothers you about it? So somebody's looking.
Now they're
So what?
my main attraction.
So somebody's looking in through your window. So what? Why does that bother you?
Keep her hair covered all the time.
What?
My wife has to keep her hair covered all the time.
Your wife has to keep her hair covered all the time, and you have to wear a shirt all the time. You can't walk around with your T-shirt, and when you can't just kick open the refrigerator, grab a salami, and bite a hunk out of the salami like you do once in a while, even if you make a bracha, because you want everybody to think you're civilized, right? We've all been there, right? And there's certain things I do at home which I want to create an impression outside the home. I don't want somebody looking into my house. I don't want to be under a camera all the time. That's true. But look what Rashi says very carefully. Look very carefully now back at Rashi. Rashi says he saw 2 lines from the bottom. Ra'a she'ein pischein mechuvanim zeh keneged zeh. He saw their entrances are not facing each other. Shelo yotzitz l'soch oel chavero. That he shouldn't look into the other guy's tent. In other words, when they were building the tent, when I'm turning my entrance away from your entrance, is it to stop you from invading my privacy or to stop me from invading your privacy?
Double yes.
And Rashi says the latter, not the former. Rashi says, why did I do it? Because I don't want to chas v'sholom invade your privacy. That's what Balaam is so impressed by. Balaam is looking at these structures, and somehow he knows that was the motivation. And that's what Balaam can't get past. Who is Balaam? He's a guy who's jealous of everybody else. Remember we spoke about that? His jealousy. Where does jealousy come from? Jealousy is because you got your nose in everybody else's business. You're always looking at somebody else. How can you live without looking? It's like the guy who says to his wife, hey, we're overdrawn in the bank. We're overdrawn in the bank. And the wife says it's the neighbors. They're always doing something we can't afford. Why are you watching the neighbors? Why are you looking at what's going on by somebody else? And the answer is a jealous person is always looking. What's he got? And what have you got? What have you got? What have you got? A jealous person is always, and that's who Balaam is. That's the essence of Balaam. And he says, hey, there's a nation over here that respects other people's privacy. And by the way, that doesn't not just physical. You call Hezek Re'iyah. Hezek Re'iyah is my obligation to not look at you. That's what we're learning about in the Gemara, right? I have an obligation not to respect your privacy. By the way, that extends to personal issues as well. Sometimes in life, something say, hey, what are your plans for the vacation? Whatever. No, come on, tell me. That's an invasion of somebody. I don't want to talk about it. And by the way, there's a very good line. If ever want to not discuss something, if somebody's pressuring you, always say, the best line you could say is, it's in my own best interest not to discuss it. Because everybody understands people have their own best interest, number one. And number two, it gives it that little aura of mystery. It's in my own best interest. He's with the Shabbat. Oh, maybe this guy's an undercover. It gives it that little what do you call it? So it gives that little pizzazz, right? But it's in my own best interest not to discuss it, and you should realize to respect I have my privacy, and that you just like you have your privacy, and we should respect other people's privacy. That's what Balaam is so impressed by the Jewish people. Number one. Number two, take a look at the Vayisamish Alo Vayobar. He says his parable. Ne'um Balaam ben Beor. How does the article translate? The words of Balaam, the son of Beor. Ne'um HaGever Shesum Ha'ayin. The words of the man with the open eye. Now, the open eye, according to the Gemara, Balaam had one eye was blocked off. He lost the vision in one eye. Now, what happens when a person loses the vision in one eye? You can still see, but what's affected?
Depth perception.
Depth perception is real. Remember Kirby Puckett? You never heard of Kirby Puckett? Guys, you never heard of Kirby Puckett? Did you ever hear of Guy Lafleur you've heard of? Yeah, that we've heard of. Yeah, Guy Lafleur you've heard of. Yeah. Kirby Puckett you never heard of? Okay, he was a center fielder for Minnesota. And one day he was a great baseball player. One day he went to sleep and he woke up in the morning and one of his eyes was blurry. So he thought maybe he slept wrong. It turned out that he lost the vision in one eye and immediately had to stop playing baseball, because when somebody's throwing a fastball at you at about 97 miles an hour, you need some depth perception. And even then you need a prayer, right? So without depth perception, to hit a fastball is not a good idea to try to hit a fastball when you don't have depth perception. Balaam has lost his depth perception. If you only got one eye, he's obviously lost the depth perception. But what does that really mean? What do we care about if he's physically got disabled? What do we care? What's the Torah trying to tell you? I don't think that it just means his physical depth perception. It means he's lost his depth perception of life. Exactly. How are you reading the map? How are you reading life? How are you reading this world? There could be a situation where a person is physically present. You're physically present, but you're just not there. When I was in chemistry class, in junior year in chemistry, we had our midterms. Chemistry, junior year, I got an 85 on the midterm. Not bad, right? The problem is that it was out of 200 points, right? And it was the lowest grade in the class. The next grade in the class was a 114. I still remember that. And I remember the teacher calling me over after class. He said, Mr. Kaplan, I think you're having some trouble. So I wanted to say I had trouble as a teacher, but I didn't. I'm a civil man, so I kept a civil tongue. And I remember thinking, I was there, I was present, and I heard all but none of it meant anything to me as much as I knew as much about chemistry as I knew about the topography in Afghanistan. The difference being that I had been in Afghanistan physically on a risk board, right? At least I had that much connection to Afghanistan when I played risk. I was never in the country called Afghanistan. Chemistry class, I was there physically, but none of me was there. So you could be there, hearing it, seeing it, experiencing it. You're completely misreading it. By the way, I graduated high school anyway, and I didn't become a chemist. At the end of the day, Balaam, everything he looks at, he distorts. And that's really a description of most people going through this world. That they look at this world, there's a physical world, there are things that are available, and a person distorts what is the purpose of life, why are we here, and how do we make use of what's available for us. And if a person has one-eyed vision, so then a person distorts what the purpose of life is. That's the idea. Okay, now go to Pasuk Zayin. Then he says the famous, by the way, he says the famous word, Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenos, the 3 lines from the top, which we say every morning. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenosecha Yisrael. How good are your tents, Yaakov, your dwelling places, Israel. Now, by the way, one of the ideas here, Yaakov has 2 names, Yaakov and Yisrael. He says, Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, how good are your tents, Yaakov, Mishkenosecha, your dwelling places, Yisrael. So, there are 2 aspects of the Jewish home. Who is known as Yaakov? The women. where the Torah says, Kosomar lebeis Yaakov. The women are called the house of Yaakov. Yaakov is secondary to Yisrael. Yisrael is the name that represents prominence. The wife is the Ezer Kenegdo. She's the vice president. But she's the one in charge of the home. That's why she's called Beis Yaakov. The girls' schools are called Beis Yaakov, the house of Yaakov. That the whole movement is based on that pasuk. Kosomar lebeis Yaakov. Beis Yaakov means the women. And the women are the home. If they build the home properly, Mishkenosecha Yisrael, then the men succeed in their Mishkan. What's the Mishkan of the men? Where do the men's dwelling place? Where's the temple for the men? Is the Beis Medrash. If the wife gives the husband the support and the backing, then the husband, and it's the wife. The Gemara says it all comes from the wife. The wife is very, very powerful. She builds the home. She's called Beis Yaakov. I happened to go to day school in Chicago, which at the time was called Beis Yaakov Hebrew Parochial School, because the guy who donated the money was a guy named Yaakov. Later on, they changed the name of the school to Tiferes Tzvi, but they couldn't do it when I was there. No. Now, did you know that Tiferes Tzvi was called Beis Yaakov? I was in Beis Yaakov Hebrew Parochial School. Then we play Erie Crown, which the other day school was baseball. They would beat us, and then they'd rub our faces in it because they say, "And you go to a girls' school." Ha! And what could you say? So if we'd win, it would be one thing, but we'd lose and then have to Beis Yaakov.
Sorry, Rabbi.
I mean, I've been to therapy for it. It took a toll. It took a toll. Okay, now skip down because they get desperate. Now, what are we going to do in order to trip up the Jewish people? So Balaam leaves on page 874, and he says to Balak, "Listen, nothing's worked, but I'm going to give you one piece of advice. You want to take down the Jewish people? I'm going to give you a piece of advice. There's one thing the God of the Jewish people hates, and that's called immorality. God hates immorality. And what you're going to do is you're going to bring out, what's that?
What date?
Immorality. And sexual immorality. And what you're going to do is you're going to have the Moabite girls come out, and they're going to entice the Jewish men into sin. And the Midianites, and then on page 874, it begins like this, the single most violent act that we're going to find anywhere in the Torah. It says, Vayeshev Yisrael Bashitim, the Jewish people dwell in a place called Shittim. The root of the word is very closely related to the Hebrew word shtus, which is nonsense, because they get involved in all sorts of nonsense here. Vayochel ha'am liznos el benos Moav. They start sinning with the daughters of Moab. Vatikrena la'am lezivchei Eloheim. They invite the people to bring offering to their God. They eat and they bow to their gods. We'll explain this in a second. Vayitzamed Yisrael of Baal Peor. They become very connected to this idol worship called Baal Peor. Vayichar af Hashem b'Yisrael. So what happened over here is the Moabite girls go out, and what happens is they set up a system of the Jews are in the desert, but there were Bedouins or they're near various towns, and they set up some stores, some shops. This was all Balaam's idea, and the Jewish men went shopping, and the girls presented them with some wine. They gave them wine to drink, and this is before the decree that came out, the rabbinic decree that you're not allowed to drink non-Jewish wine. And once the men start drinking wine, when as the old saying goes, the more you drink, the better she starts to look. And they started drinking, and at a certain point, they solicited they solicited the girls, and the girls said, "Okay, but before you do, I want you to worship our God." And the God was the Peor, Baal Peor. Now, Baal Peor was a form of idol worship where those that served it would actually go and relieve themselves in front of the idol. They relieve. That's how you serve the idol, by relieving yourself in front of the idol. The Gemara says there was a Jewish man who one day decided to mock he was traveling near this Peor worship, wherever it was, and he decided to make a mockery out of the idol worship. So he went in, and the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, he relieved himself in front of the idol, and then he used the idol's nose to wipe himself. And the priests went wild. They said, "Wow, No one is ever served with that kind of devotion, right? So it backfired. And then there was a non-Jewish woman who was ill, and she worshipped every idol every form of idol worship in order to cure herself. To hopefully it would cure her. And then she got to Peor, and she said, "What do you do to worship this idol?" So they said, "Well, you eat and drink certain foods that cause your stomach to be very loose, and then you relieve yourself in front of the idol." She said, "I'd rather die than do that." That's what she said. But that was now. What does that mean? What is that what kind of worship? I mean, that's ridiculous. How do you go and serve your God? Go to the central bus station and use the bathroom. That's how you serve your God. Well, what does that mean? It's a symbol of anything goes. It's a symbol of anything goes, which is very often what you find in cults and you find in various all these various bizarre forms of it. There are no rules. There are no limitations, and there are no rules. So the Jewish people are busy with the Moabite girls. And at a certain point, God says to Moshe Rabbeinu, all right, you're going to have to take the sinners and you're going to have to execute them. And then skip down to Pasuk Vav. V'hinei ish mi b'nei Yisrael ba, a Jewish man comes along, about 8 lines from the bottom, on 874. V'hinei ish mi b'nei Yisrael ba, vayakrev el echav es hamidyonis, takes a Midianite princess, la'enei Moshe u'la'enei kol adas b'nei Yisrael, in full view. V'hema bochim pesach Ol Moed, they were crying by the entrance of Ol Moed. Jews are dying. And this guy comes along. Now this is the head of the tribe of Shimon. And the Medrash says he takes a woman named Cosby, his name is Zimri, takes a woman named Cosby, and he grabs her by the hair and he says, "Come here. You're going to sin. I want to sin with you." And she says to him, "Listen, I was told by my father to only sin with the leader of the Jewish people." So Zimri says to her, "Listen, I'm ahead of him. I'm from the tribe of Shimon, which is the second tribe. He's only from the tribe of Levi. So I'm just as good as him." And he comes to Moshe Rabbeinu and he says, "Hey, is she permissible or is she forbidden? And if you tell me she's forbidden, who allowed you to marry the midnight, that Zipporah, who also came from Midian?" Now what happened? Moshe had converted Zipporah. Zimri converted this girl. But Moshe Rabbeinu felt this is an illicit conversion. This is a conversion for the sake, simply for the sake, it's a reform conversion. It's just for the sake of immorality. There's no real conversion here. So what happens? He takes her into a tent. And they're not going to discuss philosophy. Vayar Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron HaKohen. Vayoka mitocha Eda, he gets up. He was apparently, the Sanhedrin was meeting, it is permissible, it's not permissible, and at a certain point, Pinchas said, this is not the time for discussing, and it's not the time for fetching with the thumbs, and I don't know what does Rashi say, what it's supposed to say, it's time for action. Vayikach romach biyado, he takes a spear. And the numerical value of spear, by the way, is 248, which is it corresponds to the 248 limbs that we have. He took his whole essence. Pinchas put everything behind this. And what does he do? He takes off the head of the spear and he puts it in his cloth, he hides it, and he walks along with the staff. And he gets to the tent where this man and this woman are, and the tribe of Shimon are outside the tent. Vayovo achar is Yisrael el hakuba. He comes to the tent, and this guy says, "Yeah, what do you want?" He says, "Listen, what makes us holier than you? I also want to go in there and have a good time." So they said, "Oh, good, the Frumies allowed it." Right? Pinchas is one of the Frumies, grandson of Aaron HaKohen. Good, even the Frumies, even the Charedim are doing it. That's great. That's great. So they let Pinchas in. So what does Pinchas do? Vayidkar es shnehem. He puts the spear back on, and he stabs Es Isha Yisrael Ves Isha El Kavasa. He gets them right where it counts. Vateyatzar Magefa Me'al B'nai Israel. And the Jewish people, the plague stops. Now what happened over here? Pinchas goes in, a vigilante. A vigilante act. Did you ever see Death Wish? With Charles Bronson? Guys, didn't you do anything cultural? He what do you call it? The great movie. The long time ago. So he's a vigilante, and he just goes around killing muggers. And all the crime rates drop in New York. Great movie. And then eventually the police know who he is, and they don't want to put a stop to it because this is working. So he's on the subway and he kills a guy at the subway who's hassling somebody, just killing people left, right, and center. It's a great movie. So Pinchas walks in. I mean, you're talking about a long time ago. Pinchas walks in, and Pinchas takes a spear and he kills them. Now, what was he doing? Why are you allowed to vigilanteism? Where's the vigilanteism? So the halacha says like this: Haboel Aramis, a Jewish man who is consorting with a non-Jewish woman, kanoim pogimbo. Somebody who is zealous, somebody who is upset for the sake of God, is allowed to take action because it's not a capital offense. It's not like adultery with a Jewish woman, which is a capital offense. Beis executes if you have witnesses and everything else. A Jewish man who's consorting, if anybody's using technology, please put it away. It's not respectful for the Torah. If a Jewish man who is please put away all the technology. Gentlemen, put away all phones, computers. It's not respectful, or use it in a different room. It's not respectful for the Torah. A Jewish man who is consorting with a non-Jewish woman, it's not a capital offense. But somebody who is upset for the sake of God is allowed to take action, vigilante action, and kill them as long as he catches them in the act. And so much so that when Pinchas was coming with the spear, if Zimri would have stopped what he was doing and turned around, he could kill Pinchas in self-defense. And if Pinchas would kill Zimri after Zimri has stopped what he's doing, he'd be judged as a murderer. It's only if he catches them in the course of the act. And Pinchas comes in with the spear and he kills them. Now, nowadays, there's no such thing. First of all, we would run out of spears, number one. Number two, no one nowadays has got 100% pure motivation. It has to be, if it's 99% that I'm upset for the sake of God, and 1% that he's a White Sox fan, not not bad enough. That can't do that. Then you're murdering him. It's got to be 100%. Got to be 100%. There can be no reason. Yeah, this guy 99% and 1% because he always takes my parking space. Not good enough. Then you're a murderer. And since none of us are at that level, that we're not allowed to do it nowadays. Pinchas comes to Moshe Rabbeinu. Now listen to this. This is remarkable. Rashi brings down. Pinchas comes to Moshe Rabbeinu. He said, great uncle, didn't you teach us when you came down from Sinai? Now Moshe Rabbeinu taught the Jewish people the entire Torah. And the Gemara says that he taught it, and they taught it. Another group came in, he taught it 4 times. He said, didn't you teach us that if a Jewish man is consorting with a non-Jewish woman, you can take vigilante action? So Moshe Rabbeinu said, the guy who reads the letter should carry out the instructions. Meaning, you thought of it, you do it. Now, the question becomes like this. First of all, why is Pinchas asking? You've learned enough Torah. I understand if there's a halachic issue of borer, the laws of separation on Shabbos, and you haven't got it all clear. And you say, well, does this include if their tomato is only touching the cucumber? I understand that in a technical area, maybe that day in Shir, maybe you were a little tired and you didn't get it all straight. It was a little confusing. When Moshe Rabbeinu gave the Shir about vigilanteism, I think everybody was paying complete attention, got some interesting subject matter over here. Moshe Rabbeinu was a very good teacher. Pinchas was a very good student. Why is he asking? Moshe, when you came down from the mountain, didn't you teach it? What, that you forgot? I understand if you forgot some of the technical laws of shatnez. That I understand. I understand if you were learning Gemara and you got confused about hezek re'iyah exactly, or if there's a migu. That I understand. Nobody gets confused when you got a script that even Hollywood would go gaga over, and nobody didn't you teach us that you're allowed to take a spear and kill people? And it says, well, you read the letter, you carry out the instructions. What's going on here? The answer is a lesson for us. Anytime you think to do something that involves a little bit of drama in Jewish life, just ask before you do it. Don't just ask first. Do you know how many times over the years I've been asked by guys, should we go downtown and beat up missionaries? Guys have asked me that many times. Should we go downtown and beat up missionaries? It's a mitzvah. It's also a mitzvah to put on tefillin. Why don't you go do that? It's also a mitzvah to learn some Gemara. Why don't you go do that? You're looking for mitzvahs, all of a sudden you're looking for mitzvahs. Yeah, but this is a super mitzvah. Because this one could get you a little bit of prestige. Maybe you get into the newspaper. No, you can't go downtown and beat up missionaries. And don't go downtown. I don't want to read about you in the paper the next day. And the truth is that if it was a mitzvah, there are people much greater than us that would already be performing that mitzvah. The leaders of the generation would do it too. Why? Where are they? Why? They don't know it's a mitzvah. Only you figure it out because you've been in Ohr Somayach for 2 weeks and you realize now, 2 weeks ago you didn't keep Shabbos and now all of a sudden you realize that's a mitzvah. If it's too, there's a rule, by the way. If you're really excited about doing the mitzvah, then it probably isn't. Because we don't get so excited about doing mitzvahs. There's usually a force against us called the evil inclination. The Yetzer Hara usually stops us from doing mitzvahs. When you're really excited about doing a mitzvah, it's like the guy who's at home and his wife needs his help taking care of putting the kids to sleep at night, and he gets a phone call. Do you think you could come to the shul to help us straighten out arrange the shul for the Malav Malka? The guy says, oh yeah, he's all excited about it. That means you shouldn't be doing it. My brother once told me, when you have a choice of doing 2 things in life, 2 mitzvahs, right? The one you want to do is right. The one you don't want to do is probably the one you should be doing. That's the rule of thumb. If you're really excited about doing a mitzvah, this is great fun. Give me a spear. What could be better? I always wanted to be a harpoonist. Here's my chance. So Pinchas says to Moshe Rabbeinu, what does Moshe Rabbeinu say to Pinchas? Yeah, well, you read the letter, carry out the contents. Why doesn't Moshe Rabbeinu do it himself? Once Pinchas reminds him, do you think Moshe Rabbeinu forgot? Did Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know the law? Why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu do it? Why did Pinchas come and Moshe Rabbeinu then sends him? Oh, you thought of it, so you do it. What, I didn't think of it? Oh, you reminded me? But I taught it to you. Why wouldn't I know about it? Why wouldn't I be doing it? The answer goes back to that medrash I told you. When Zimri comes along with her, and he says to Moshe Rabbeinu, hey, is she permissible or not? And if you tell me she's not permissible, so who allowed you to marry the Midianite girl? Oh, you turned it personal. If Moshe Rabbeinu takes action, there's a concern. People seeing what he's doing are going to think that there's his own personal honor or his wife's honor is at stake. It's an interesting thing when it comes to men. What would happen to any husband who somebody comes over and starts yelling at your wife or even physically hits your wife? What would you do? That's when chivalry kicks in, right? Chivalry. We defend our wives against everybody but ourselves. Isn't that interesting? No one's allowed to yell at my wife except me. We're such wonderful people. It's an interesting phenomenon. Ray, don't you dare yell at my wife. What did you do to get him to yell at you? So Pinchas, Moshe Rabbeinu said, I can't get involved here. This is going to look like a personal issue. That I can't do. Pinchas, you thought of it, you do it. And Pinchas takes a spear. Now the Gemara says there were many miracles that were done here. First of all, if Pinchas would have gone into the tent, now think about this. How did he get in? He said, I want to go in and have some fun also. What if he would have gone in and Zimri would have stopped what he was doing? And then Pinchas at that point isn't allowed to kill him. Now Pinchas comes walking out of the tent. What's that going to look like? What were you doing in there? Well, I was going to kill him. Oh, yeah. He looks pretty alive to me. You understand? He's putting life and reputation on the line here. The Gemara says there were several miracles here. Number one, that Zimri didn't call out for help. Otherwise, the tribe of Shimon would have killed it. Pinchas' life was in danger here. And his reputation was in danger here. And then he stabs them, and he carries them out on the end of a spear, holding them like this, and they don't fall off the spear. So the Gemara mentions, and not only that, the doorpost rises so he could get them out. And then he parades them around the entire Jewish people to show them. That was probably pretty embarrassing. Besides painful, it was probably embarrassing for Zimri. And he's carrying them around the entire Jewish people, showing them what he did. So the Gemara enumerates a number of miracles that took place here. But at the end of the day, we're going to see at the beginning of next week's parsha what Pinchas's reward is going to be. Okay? You could call it get the point.
Who's in the mood for kebabs?